My name is Amani Washington, and I am 34 years of age. I had just come into possession of $29 million and was hurrying home to share the life-altering tidings with my husband. However, I never reached my destination. A large vehicle collided with me, and upon awakening, I found myself alone in a hospital room. When I finally managed to contact my husband, Marcus, his reaction was not concern. It was annoyance. He declared he had neither the time nor the funds for a failure and abruptly ended the call. Days later, he entered my hospital chamber attired in a new suit, his hand entwined with his current partner. He tossed divorce documents onto my bed, but when his new wife, a formidable legal professional, glimpsed my face, she let out a shriek and dropped her costly attaché case. My husband remained oblivious. She was my legal representative, the very person overseeing my $29 million trust. Before I proceed with the remainder of my narrative, kindly inform me in the comments below from where you are viewing this. And if you have ever experienced betrayal from someone who was meant to cherish you above all others, please press the like button and subscribe, as you will be astounded by what transpired subsequently. The initial sensation I registered was the rhythmic beeping, a high-pitched, unwavering pulse that pierced through the haze clouding my thoughts. I attempted to open my eyelids. The stark, fluorescent illumination of the medical facility felt like daggers piercing my skull. I was at Mercy General Hospital in Atlanta. The environment was cold, devoid of any warmth, and carried a faint aroma of disinfectant mingled with a metallic tang. A sharp, tearing agony shot through my chest as I tried to draw a deep breath. It felt as though my ribs were grinding against each other. Suddenly, the events of that day rushed back in fragmented, terrifying pieces. The blinding glare of immense headlights in my rearview mirror, the horrifying, deafening sound of metal contorting and glass fragmenting. And just before that, mere hours earlier, the gentle tone of an elderly attorney, Mr. Hayes, within his impeccably appointed downtown office. The air in his office was imbued with the scent of aged tomes and fine leather. "Congratulations, Ms. Washington. Your Aunt Hattie has bequeathed her entire estate to you. The trust is valued at $29 million. $29 million, a sum so immense it felt entirely fictional. The discomfort in my chest pulled me back to the present. I was alive. I had endured. My body felt like a leaden weight, bruised and battered, yet I was breathing. I frantically searched the bedside table for my mobile device. It was there, resting on the metal tray next to a plastic tumbler of water, but its screen was a shattered mosaic of broken glass, entirely black and rendered useless. My fingers, weak and clumsy, fumbled for the nurse's call button. I pressed it repeatedly. "My husband Marcus, where is he? Does he know I'm here?" These were the initial utterances I managed as the door creaked open. A nurse entered, an older African-American woman, her scrubs a faded shade of blue. Her countenance was kind, yet etched with the profound weariness of one who has witnessed much. Her name tag identified her as Jackie. She moved with practiced efficiency, assessing the IV drip connected to my arm, her gaze sweeping across the cardiac monitor. She regarded me with a profound sympathy that I couldn't yet comprehend. "Honey," Nurse Jackie murmured, her voice low and tinged with fatigue. "You've been here for 4 days. You were in a coma. It was touch and go for a while." 4 days? My voice emerged as a dry rasp, my throat feeling like rough sandpaper. "Where is Marcus? My husband, Marcus Vance. He must be terribly worried. Did he call? Is he in the waiting area?" I clung desperately to the notion of him rushing down the corridor. Nurse Jackie exhaled a sigh that seemed to brace one for unwelcome tidings. For a fleeting instant she averted her gaze long enough for my stomach to plummet. "There hasn't been any man named Marcus here to visit you, honey. Not one call, not one message left at the front desk. We had your name as Imani Washington, and we listed a Marcus Vance as your emergency contact. We called him multiple times. No one answered. No, that's impossible, I whispered, shaking my head, which sent a fresh wave of pain through my skull. He must be out of town. His startup. He travels for his startup. I was fabricating justifications, knowing full well the alternative was too dreadful to contemplate. I was aware that Marcus, my 36-year-old husband, could be self-centered. I understood his bitterness over his failures, his resentment towards my stable, albeit low-paying, position at the non-profit while his aspirations crumbled. But not this, not abandonment. This must be a mistake. I have to call him, I insisted, attempting to prop myself up on my elbows, but the pain was blinding. I have to let him know I'm all right. My mind raced, still clinging to the belief that this was all a terrible, awful misunderstanding. I thought of the $29 million. He would be so relieved. This fortune would resolve all our difficulties. It would bring him happiness again. He would come for me. He had to. My hand trembled so violently that I could barely grasp the heavy plastic receiver of the hospital telephone that Nurse Jackie placed in my palm. I dialed Marcus's number, my fingers slipping twice on the keypad. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, he answered, but it wasn't his voice I heard first. It was the soundtrack to his life. Loud R&B music, the clinking of glasses, and a burst of high-pitched laughter from a female voice in the background. He was at a party. What? He barked into the receiver, his tone sharp and irritated as if I were a telemarketer interrupting his meal. Marcus, I whispered, my voice cracking as the first sob escaped. Marcus, it's me. Where are you? I could hear him emit an impatient huff. Imani, what is it? I'm busy. I'm right in the middle of a meeting with important partners. You know the deal I was telling you about. What do you want? I'm in the hospital, I cried, tears now flowing freely, hot and stinging against my bruised skin. I was in an accident. I'm at Mercy General. There was a pause. The music in the background continued unabated. His voice, when it returned, was as cold as ice. Not worried, not alarmed, just irritated. Hospital, are you serious? What did you do now? Did you wreck the car? God, Imani, always something. No, I gasped, the pain in my chest flaring. Marcus, please, you have to come. A truck. It hit me. I have broken ribs. They said I was in a coma for 4 days. The music suddenly softened as if he had stepped away from the din, not for privacy, but to be heard more clearly. His subsequent words were not a shout. They were delivered with a low, chilling contempt that wounded me more deeply than any broken bone. Listen, Imani, he stated, his voice flat. I am tired of you. I am so tired of your drama. You are always a victim. You are a burden. I am trying to build something here, something real, and you just keep dragging me down. What are you talking about? I stammered, confused. I don't have the time, he snapped, and I don't have the money to run around after a loser. Do you understand me, a loser? You're on your own. Take care of yourself. Then the click. He was gone. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, loud and mocking in the quiet of the hospital room. I slowly replaced the receiver on its cradle. My hand was now perfectly steady. The tears had ceased. A loser. I stared at the blank beige wall. The word reverberated. Loser. For 10 years I had supported his so-called startup. 10 years of my salary from the non-profit job he disdained. The job that paid our rent, our bills, our car insurance, the job that subsidized his lifestyle. I paid for the expensive suits he wore to networking events. I paid for the credit cards he maxed out on business dinners. I was the one who ate leftovers for lunch so he could entertain potential investors with steak. For a decade I had been his anchor, his support, the one who told him he was brilliant when the world told him he was failing. And now, lying in a hospital bed, broken and alone, I was the loser. The betrayal was so absolute, so complete, it felt tangible. It was a cold, hard stone settling in my stomach, heavier and more painful than any injury sustained in the collision. He hadn't merely abandoned me, he had despised me all along. I was still gazing at the telephone when Nurse Jackie re-entered. She carried a small tray with a cup of water and some pills. She must have perceived the expression on my face. The tears were gone, the shock had frozen them, I simply felt cold. She placed the tray on the rolling table, her movements deliberate and unhurried. "He said that to you, didn't he, honey?" Her voice was soft, yet there was a steely undertone, an anger not directed at me. "Called you a loser?" I merely nodded, my eyes fixed on the beige wall opposite my bed. The word loser echoed in my ears incessantly. Jackie sighed that same weary, knowing sigh. "A loser? That's rich. He's been living like a king. That American Express gold card of yours must have a pretty high limit." My head snapped towards her. The sudden movement sent a jolt of white-hot agony through my ribs, but my mind suddenly outpaced the pain. What are you talking about?" "The credit card alerts," she stated, her voice lowering. "The hospital billing department receives a notification when a patient's card on file is being used extensively, in case of fraud. Someone spent $5,000 at the Gucci store at Lenox Square yesterday afternoon, and another $2,000 at Del Frisco's steakhouse the night before that." I assumed it was family. I was utterly stunned. "What? That's impossible. My cards are in my wallet." "My wallet? It's in my purse. The police must have it from the accident." "Oh no, baby," Nurse Jackie said. She stopped adjusting my IV drip and looked me directly in the eye. Her kind face was now a mask of grim resolve. "The police don't have it. We do. Or rather, we did." My mouth went dry. What do you mean you did?" She took a deep breath, the kind one takes before delivering devastating news. "Security logs. We had to review them this morning when the billing alerts came in. A man named Marcus Vance, your husband, he came here 4 days ago, the same day you were admitted." My heart hammered against my fractured ribs. "He was here, but you said no one visited." "He was here," she repeated, her voice flat and hard. "He was here while you were in a coma, but he didn't ask to see you. He didn't ask a single doctor about your condition. He went straight to the nurse's station on the intake floor, flashed his ID, said he was your husband, and that he needed to collect your personal belongings to keep them safe for you at home." She shook her head in evident disgust. "We had a new nurse on shift, first week. She didn't know the protocol. She believed him. She went to the property lockup and she gave him your purse." The air left my lungs in a silent rush. He was here while I was unconscious, while I was fighting for my life. He was here not to hold my hand, not to pray for me. He was here to steal my wallet. "We only found out for sure this morning," Jackie continued, "when we cross-referenced the fraud alerts with the visitor log and the property incident report. He stole from you, Amani, while you were lying right here." The shock was so complete, so absolute, it was almost clarifying. It was like a cold, sharp blade sliding between my broken ribs, piercing something far deeper than any bone. The physical pain from the accident was insignificant. This was the true injury. This was the assault. The man I had loved, the man I had supported, had rifled through my belongings while I was on the verge of death. I stopped crying. It wasn't a conscious decision. The tears simply ceased as if a faucet had been violently shut off. The throbbing pain in my ribs, the ache in my skull, the stiff soreness in my neck, all of it faded. It became quiet. It was replaced by a profound, sharp, and terrifyingly clear emptiness. It was a cold so deep it burned. He was here. That one fact echoed in the silence of my mind. He was here in this hospital 4 days ago. He knew I was unconscious. He knew I was fighting for my life. And he did not ask to see me. He did not ask a single doctor if I would live or die. He went to the front desk and he stole my purse. He stole my credit cards while I was dying. And then, like the final missing piece of a horrifying puzzle clicking into place, it struck me. It wasn't a gradual thought, it was a violent collision. A second impact, just as brutal as the first. The last memory, the one from just before the headlights, became vividly clear. No longer a foggy, dreamlike fragment, it was sharp. I was sitting in my car in the parking garage of the law firm Hayes and Associates. The scent of damp concrete and the worn leather of my decade-old Honda filled the air. My hands were shaking so violently I had to dial his number twice. I was crying then too, but they were tears of joy, of disbelief, of a desperate, life-altering relief. Marcus had picked up his phone instantly, sounding annoyed. "What, Amani? I'm busy. I'm in the middle of something." "Marcus!" I had shouted into the phone, my voice breaking. "Oh my God, Marcus, you won't believe it. You will not believe what just happened. Aunt Hattie, she left it all for me." There was a pause. I heard him huff. "What are you talking about?" he had snapped. "Left you what? Her collection of ugly hats, her dusty old books?" "No, Marcus." I was laughing and crying simultaneously, the sound hysterical in the confines of the small car. "The money, all of it. The lawyer, Mr. Hayes, he just told me it's $29 million. 29 million, Marcus. We're rich. We're rich." There was silence on his end. It wasn't long, but it was long enough. It wasn't the jubilant shout I had anticipated. It was a dead, flat, calculating silence. I heard him take a slow breath as if to compose himself. Then his voice returned, different, lower, urgent. "Where are you exactly?" "I'm still in the parking garage at the lawyer's office. I'm coming home right now." "No, stay there. Wait, no, just come home," he said, his voice strange and hurried, stumbling over his words. "Just come straight home. And Amani, yes, don't tell anyone. Do you hear me? Not your sister, not your mother, nobody. This is our news, just ours, understand?" Yes, of course." I had sobbed, my heart pounding with love and excitement. "I'm on my way. I love you." I had hung up, my heart feeling as though it would burst from my chest. I shifted the car into drive, giddy with the fantasy of telling him we could finally clear all his debts, that his startup could become a reality, that our lives were finally beginning. I was so happy. I had driven out of the parking garage onto the main road, heading for the highway. And on the way home on that quiet stretch of road, the black truck had materialized out of nowhere. It hadn't just hit me, it had hunted me. I remembered it now, cutting across 2 lanes. I remembered it aiming for my door. I stared at the beige hospital wall. The steady beep, beep, beep of the cardiac monitor was the only sound in the room. He knew about the money. He was the only one who knew. He called me a loser. He hung up on me. He stole my wallet while I was in a coma. He was spending my money while I lay here. This was not an accident. This was not a hit and run. This was an execution that failed. My husband Marcus had attempted to kill me. The pain from my ribs was a burning inferno, but a new, colder terror was spreading through me. I was being hunted. My husband had tried to murder me. And his important partners. He was at the party. It was at my sister's house. I was alone, trapped in this hospital bed. A sitting duck. I needed help. In a final surge of desperate, primal fear, I reached for the hospital phone again. There was one last person. My sister, Tamara. Perhaps she didn't know. Perhaps she would believe me. My fingers trembled as I dialed her number from memory. Sister, Sister Tamara, I choked out when she answered. The tears I thought had dried up were streaming down my face again, hot and panicked. Please, you have to help me. I'm at Mercy General. I was in a crash. A truck hit me. I paused, drawing in a painful breath, and then I spoke the words aloud for the first time. Marcus, he was here. He stole my wallet while I was in a coma. And oh God, Tamara, I think he tried to kill me. The line was silent, not the shocked silence I had hoped for. It was a heavy, annoyed silence. Imani, her voice when it came was not soft. It was high-pitched, sharp, and dripping with impatience. It was the tone she always adopted when I was an embarrassment. What in the world are you talking about? Tried to kill you? She snapped. Are you drunk? What kind of nonsense are you trying to pull right now? No, I'm in the hospital. I'm hurt. Please, you have to listen. I don't have time for this, Imani, she cut me off. Do you have any idea what day it is? It's Sunday. Ryan's parents are here. His boss is here. We are in the middle of a very important barbecue for Ryan's firm, and you are calling me with this drama. My mind went blank. A barbecue? She was worried about a barbecue. But Tamara, he's spending my money. He's at a party. Of course he's at a party, you idiot. She laughed, a short, cruel sound. He's here. He's in the backyard with Ryan right now. I couldn't breathe. He was there. He was at her house with her husband while I was in a hospital bed. Marcus is at your house, I whispered, the cold terror now complete. Yes, he's right outside. Tamara's voice was rising in frustration. My husband Ryan is finally helping Marcus get back on his feet. He's introducing him to his partners, helping him get funding for a new important deal. And you have the nerve to call here crying and accusing him of trying to kill you. You are unbelievable. You are just like you've always been, jealous and dramatic. Jealous? I was stunned. Yes, jealous. You're jealous that I married a successful man. She spat. You're jealous that Ryan is willing to help your deadbeat husband when you couldn't. You just had to call and try to ruin it, didn't you? You're trying to make me look bad in front of Ryan's family. Tamara, no, I pleaded. He stole from me. I don't want to hear another word, Imani. You are embarrassing me. You are embarrassing this family. Get yourself together. Take an Uber and go home, and do not call this house again. The line went dead. She hung up on me. I sat there, the phone buzzing in my hand, the sound of the dial tone screaming in my ear. He was there. They were all together. My sister, my brother-in-law, Ryan, and my husband, Marcus. They were at a barbecue, laughing, making deals while spending my money after trying to kill me. I slowly placed the phone back on the hook. The realization was absolute. I had no family. They were all in on it, or worse, they simply did not care. My life was less important than their connection to Ryan's money, Ryan's white shoe firm, and the social status they craved. I was the burden, the scapegoat, and I had just become a problem they needed to resolve. 2 days passed. I did not cry again. The rage, so cold and so absolute, had burned away the panic and the pain. My broken ribs were just a dull ache, a background noise to the new, sharp clarity in my mind. I was no longer a victim of an accident. I was a survivor of an attack, and I was going to fight. I spent those 2 days on the hospital phone, not with family, but with the only people who mattered, the law firm of Hayes and Associates. I spoke to Mr. Hayes himself. I told him everything, the crash, the timing, my husband's phone call, my sister's betrayal, and the stolen wallet. His response was not emotional. It was immediate and tactical. He confirmed what I suspected. The $29 million trust was ironclad. My signature and my signature alone was required for any transfer. Marcus could not touch a single penny. And as Mr. Hayes explained, that was precisely the problem. With me alive and well, Marcus received nothing. But if I were declared mentally incompetent after a tragic accident, or if I died as my husband, he could petition the court to take control of my estate. This was why he needed me helpless or dead. Ms. Washington, Mr. Hayes's voice was firm over the phone line. You are in danger. Do not speak to anyone. Not your husband, not your sister. We are handling this. I'm sending our top litigator to you immediately. You'll have your personal advocate. Her name is Brenda Adabio. She's exceptional. Don't breathe a word to anyone until she arrives. So I waited. I gazed out the hospital room window, observing the bustling Atlanta traffic flow far below. The haze of pain and sorrow had lifted from my mind. It was now razor sharp. Every fiber of my being was taut, poised for action. I was anticipating Brenda's arrival, but more than that, I was waiting for him. I wanted Marcus to appear. I needed him to reveal his intentions. And on the afternoon of the second day, he did. Footsteps sounded outside my room, a confident, overbearing gait. I recognized it all too well. The door to room 204 didn't swing open. It was flung wide, crashing against the wall, with a reverberation that sent my heart leaping. He was here. Marcus entered. He was not the man I had spoken with on the phone 2 days prior. This was not my exasperated, frustrated, faltering husband. This individual was a stranger. He wore a pristine Tom Ford suit, a deep, opulent navy that seemed impossibly costly beneath the stark hospital illumination. A chilling, sickening certainty washed over me. My platinum credit card had financed that suit. His hair was impeccably trimmed, a sharp, flawless hairline that he must have had styled that very morning. He was smiling. It wasn't a warm expression. It was a cold, biting, triumphant smirk that made my skin crawl. It was the expression of a predator that had finally, definitively, cornered its prey. But he wasn't alone. He stepped aside, holding the door with the demeanor of a perfect gentleman. A woman followed him inside. To my profound and sheer intimidation, she appeared to be the most formidable woman I had ever encountered. She was African American, tall, and possessed an almost unreal elegance. She was clad in a cream-colored, structured designer suit that I was convinced cost more than my annual income. Her heels clicked with a sharp, commanding resonance on the linoleum floor. In one hand, she carried a dark, gleaming Hermes satchel. Her hair was swept back into a severe, immaculate chignon, and her makeup was flawless. She exuded an aura of wealth and authority I had only witnessed in films. My stomach plummeted into a frigid, abyssal void. Brenda Adabio. It had to be. This was the name Mr. Hayes had provided. This was the premier litigator, the top attorney from his firm, the one who was supposed to be here to safeguard me. But she wasn't here to protect me. She was walking in, her arm entwined with my husband's. She gazed at Marcus with a fond, indulgent smile. Then her eyes shifted to me. Her gaze swept over my form reclined in the cheap, stiff, pale blue hospital gown. She noted my unkempt, matted hair. She observed the unsightly purple and yellow contusions on my arm, the IV tubing taped to my hand. Her expression, which had been so warm for Marcus, instantly hardened. She looked at me with a bored, clinical disdain. It was the look of someone about to step on an insect and annoyed by the prospect of soiling their shoe. "Oh, look at that!" Marcus's voice boomed into the room. It was jovial, loud, as if he were greeting an old acquaintance at a crowded gathering. "Still breathing?" He chuckled, a deep, unpleasant sound that reverberated in his chest. "I must confess, I truly believed you would be deceased by now. I suppose those physicians are more capable than I initially thought. What a shame!" My mouth was parched. I couldn't find my voice. My heart hammered against my fractured ribs. I simply stared at him, then at this formidable woman. This was a nightmare. This was a trap. "Marcus," I finally whispered. My voice was a weak, raspy croak. What are you doing here? Who is this?" He laughed, a full, genuine belly laugh, as if I had just delivered the most hilarious joke imaginable. He walked directly past my bed and stood beside Brenda, smoothly sliding a possessive arm around her slender waist. He drew her close and she leaned into him, her perfectly manicured hand resting on his chest. He leaned down and kissed her, a long, wet, proprietary kiss on her cheek. "Imani," he said, feigning sympathy, "I'm wounded. Is that any way to greet your husband and your replacement?" He gestured to the woman beside him, his smile widening to reveal all his teeth. "Imani, I want you to meet Brenda. She is my everything, my confidant, my protector, my new wife." I stopped breathing. The insistent beeping of the heart monitor beside my head seemed to amplify, growing faster, screaming in the sudden silence. "Well, she will be," he corrected himself, waving his hand dismissively as if it were a minor, insignificant detail. "She's my attorney first, naturally, and as soon as she's finished tidying up this unpleasantness." He gestured in my direction. He pointed at me in my bed with my broken ribs. "As soon as I am legally disentangled from this trash, she will become my wife. We're exchanging vows in Italy. She's already secured the villa in Lake Como." The woman, Brenda, finally spoke. Her voice was precisely as I had anticipated, smooth, deep, and utterly unconcerned, as if she were ordering a cup of coffee. "Marcus, darling, can we expedite this? You indicated she was prepared to sign." "I have a 3 o'clock reservation at Balthazar, and I don't wish to be tardy." "Naturally, my dear. Anything for you." Marcus beamed at her, his eyes alight with adoration. He then turned back to me, and his entire countenance shifted. The cheerful, triumphant facade crumbled. His eyes became vacant, lifeless, and cold. He reached into the inner pocket of his brand new suit jacket, the one I had financed, and withdrew a substantial stack of folded legal documents. He approached the side of my bed. He stood over me, holding the papers. "You've been quite the nuisance, Imani," he hissed, his voice low and venomous, a genuine disappointment. And then he threw the papers. He didn't hand them to me. He hurled them with force. They landed on my blanket, the sharp edge of the legal-sized paper striking my bruised chest, sending a jolt of pain that made me gasp. "Sign them," he commanded. I looked down. The top page read, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." "Divorce papers, I don't comprehend," I stammered, my gaze darting to Brenda. "Mr. Hayes from the law firm," I said. "He stated you were coming to assist me." Brenda actually laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was a short, sharp, mocking bark. "Assist you, darling? Look at you. You can't even assist yourself. Why on earth would I help you? I am Marcus's attorney and his fiancée, and frankly, I find this entire situation utterly pathetic. However," she continued, tapping her expensive shoe impatiently on the floor, "the firm Hayes and Associates works for its clients, and at this precise moment, my sole client in this room is Marcus. She's the finest legal mind in all of Atlanta, Imani." Marcus gloated, leaning in close. I could detect the scent of his expensive cologne, the very one I had purchased for his last birthday. "And you know what she's going to achieve for me? She's going to demonstrate to the court what I've been asserting for years, that you are unstable, that you are irrational." He tapped his finger against his temple. "And now, following this dreadful accident," he made air quotes with his fingers, "you are clearly mentally incompetent. You're traumatized. You cannot possibly be trusted to manage a substantial sum of money, can you?" A chill spread through my veins. The scheme, This was the plan. You won't succeed with this, I whispered, but the words lacked any substance, any power. Succeed? Marcus laughed again. I already have. Brenda has initiated the proceedings. She possesses medical evaluations. She has sworn testimony. Testimony from whom? Your sister, of course, he replied, as if it were the most obvious fact in the world. Tamara was more than willing to provide an affidavit stating you've been erratic and envious for years. Your mother, too. They are both exceedingly, exceedingly concerned about your mental well-being. They concur that I should be the one to manage your inheritance. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper so Brenda couldn't overhear. You truly believed you could withhold $29 million from me? You foolish, foolish woman? You thought you could simply exclude me. You attempted to murder me. I breathed the words, heavy and metallic on my tongue. His smile vanished. His eyes were pure ice. Prove it, he whispered back. It was a tragic accident. You're disoriented. You're experiencing delusions. That is what the judge will hear. He straightened up, adjusting his suit jacket. So here's the arrangement. You sign the documents. You grant me power of attorney. You concede that you are unwell and that I will oversee your finances. In return, I will ensure your well-being. I will arrange for you to have a comfortable room in a state-operated facility, a tranquil one where you cannot harm yourself. He picked up one of the papers and a pen, holding them out to me. Alternatively, you refuse, and Brenda here will portray you as so violently deranged that the court will dispossess you of everything regardless. And then, well, who knows what befalls individuals who are unwell and have no one? They simply vanish. He was presenting me with a choice, a living demise or an actual one. Brenda sighed impatiently. Marcus, enough. Simply secure her signature. If she refuses, we will proceed with the competency hearing on Monday. I've already filed the emergency motion. Marcus glared at me, his patience exhausted. Sign the papers, Imani. Be sensible for once in your pathetic existence. You are a failure. You possess nothing. No family, no friends, no funds. I have everything. I have the wealth. I have the authority, and I have the woman. He gestured to Brenda. She is an improvement in every conceivable aspect. He tossed the pen onto my blanket. You have 1 hour to sign before I return, and if you don't, I promise you, you will wish that truck had completed its task. He turned, placed his arm back around Brenda's waist, and they exited the room, their laughter echoing down the corridor. I was frozen. I stared at Brenda. This was the name Mr. Hayes had given me. Brenda Adarbio, the preeminent litigator, the best, the shark who was supposed to swim in and rescue me. And here she was, not merely with Marcus, but with him on her arm, his new spouse. My mind struggled to reconcile these two realities. Was this a ruse? Had Marcus somehow purchased her loyalty? Or had he deceived her so completely that she was unaware of the truth? The woman standing before me, regarding me with such ennui and contempt, could not possibly be my savior. She was my executioner. Brenda exhaled a long, impatient sound that was pure theatre. She tapped her immaculate, blood-red fingernail on the face of her gold Cartier watch. "Sign the papers, darling," she said to Marcus, her voice weary. She hasn't even glanced at me. I am merely an administrative task to be completed. I have a 3 o'clock appointment with a significant client. I cannot be late. "Of course, my dear. Anything for you," Marcus declared, kissing her temple like a devoted puppy. He turned back to me, his face instantly hardening. "You heard the lady. Sign the documents. You're wasting her time." Brenda, still ignoring me, took the sheaf of papers from his hand. She retrieved a slender gold pen from her briefcase and clicked it. "Allow me to mark the signature lines. You'd be astonished at how obtuse people can be." She removed her sleek cat-eye spectacles. also Cartier, letting them dangle from a gold chain. She scanned the top page, her sharp eyes moving swiftly. Petition for dissolution of marriage based on, yes, mental instability, she murmured, mostly to herself. That's advantageous. And the secondary filing, emergency petition for conservatorship and medical power of attorney. Perfect! She flipped to the final page. All she needs to do is sign here. She pointed the pen at the line, and the power of attorney right here. She looked up, annoyed. Where is her name identification? I need to verify the spelling for the notary. Marcus, attempting to be helpful, pointed a finger at the plastic wristband on my arm. It's right there on her wrist. They placed it on her when she arrived. Brenda leaned in. It was the first time she had actually looked at me rather than just through me. Her eyes narrowed, focusing on the small white band on my wrist. She read the name printed in stark black block letters, Imani Washington. I observed her blink, a brief, sharp movement. Then her gaze flickered to the white chart hanging at the foot of my bed. Her eyes moved from the name Imani Washington to the line directly beneath it. Social Security number. Brenda remained immobile. She simply stopped. She froze, her body rigid, her hand still clutching the gold pen hovering over the divorce papers. Her face, which had been so full of arrogant, bored confidence, utterly collapsed. The color drained from her cheeks, rendering her flawless makeup like a death mask. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on the chart. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. Marcus, who had been admiring his reflection in the darkened hospital window, finally registered the silence. "Brenda," he said, his voice still jovial. "My dear, what is amiss? Did you find an error?" She offered no response. "Brenda!" His tone was now irritated. He stepped closer and touched her arm. "Hey, what is it?" Brenda emitted a small sound in her throat, a tiny, strangled gasp. She took one slow, stiff step backward away from the bed, away from me, then another step. Her hand, the one holding her $1,000 pen, began to tremble. The other hand, the one cradling her Hermes briefcase, went limp. The briefcase, laden with documents, a laptop, and likely a small fortune in leather goods, slipped from her grasp. It landed on the linoleum floor with a heavy, sickening thud. Its contents spilled out, papers scattered, a compact skittered under the bed. She paid it no mind. She simply stared at me, her face a tableau of pure, unadulterated, career-ending terror. She raised one trembling, manicured finger, pointing it directly at my face. "Oh my God!" she shrieked. It was not a subdued sound. It was a raw, primal, terrified scream that reverberated out of the room and down the hospital corridor. It was the sound of a person who had just witnessed a phantom, or worse, just realized they had committed an error that would cost them everything. Marcus recoiled, genuinely startled. What is it, for heaven's sake? Brenda, you've startled me. Is she contagious? What's wrong with her?" Brenda whipped her head around to confront him. Her eyes blazed with a wild panic I had never witnessed in anyone. "You!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. You son of a... You lying, idiotic son of a... She turned back to me, her entire body quivering. She appeared frantic, desperate, as if I were the one in possession of power. You are Imani Washington," she stammered, pointing at the chart, then at my face. "The Hattie Trust, the $29 million file. You are my client." The silence that ensued was absolute. It was deafening. The only sound was the rhythmic beeping of my heart monitor, which was suddenly racing. Marcus simply stared at her, his mouth agape, his face a mask of utter bovine confusion. "Client?" he said, forcing a nervous laugh. "My dear, what are you implying? She's a penniless nobody. She works for a non-profit. She has nothing. Silence. Brenda's voice was no longer a shriek, it was a roar. The panicked, terrified woman who had dropped her briefcase was gone, replaced in an instant by something far more formidable. The premier litigator Mr. Hayes had promised was suddenly present, her eyes blazing with a cold, professional fury that was 1,000 times more menacing than her fear. She had been manipulated, she had been made a fool of, and now she was in full lawyer mode. "I am Brenda Adabio," she declared, her voice low, precise, and vibrating with controlled rage. "I am a senior partner at Hayes & Associates. My firm, the firm from which you retained me, is the legal executor of the Hattie Washington Trust. We are the custodians of the $29 million that rightfully belongs to her." She extended that same trembling finger, but it was no longer shaking with fear. It was quivering with rage. It was aimed at Marcus and at you. You foolish little man, you hired me. You came to my firm to hire me to steal money from my own client. Marcus was petrified. His smug, arrogant smile was frozen on his face, a grotesque mask that was slowly melting into pure, uncomprehending panic. His complexion shifted from tanned to ashen to a sickly pale white. Wait, hold on," he stammered, raising his hands. "Brenda, my dear, you're mistaken. You are my attorney. I am your fiancé. I paid you. I paid you that substantial retainer this morning." "You paid me with what?" Brenda shrieked, the sound echoing off the hard tile floor. "You paid me with what, Marcus? That gleaming American Express gold card you've been flaunting all week? The one you took me to Gucci with? The one with which you settled that $1,000 dinner at Del Frisco's? The one from which you transferred my retainer this morning?" She took a step towards him, her eyes narrowed to slits. "I saw the name on the card, you imbecile. I assumed Imani Vance was your previous designation for the account. It's her card. It's her account. You paid me to defraud my client using my client's own funds. Do you have any conception of what you have done?" And at that moment I found my voice. The pain in my ribs was still present, but it was secondary. The betrayal from my family, the shock, all of it receded, replaced by a sudden diamond-hard core of pure cold fury. I used the railing of the hospital bed, and with a gasp of pain that I refused to let become a sound of weakness, I pulled myself into a sitting position. They both turned to face me. Marcus looked like a cornered animal. Brenda looked at me, her face still contorted with anger, but now expectant. My voice when I spoke was not the weak, reedy whisper of a victim. It was low, it was clear, and it was imbued with ice. "He didn't just pay you with my card," I stated. "Counselor Adabio." Brenda's eyes locked onto mine. "He tried to kill me." The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the steady, accelerated beeping of my heart monitor. "What?" Brenda whispered, her fury giving way to a fresh, dawning horror. "I believe you need to hear the complete account," I said, my voice gaining strength. "4 days ago, I departed Mr. Hayes's office, your superior. He had just informed me of the $29 million. I was ecstatic. I believed we were finally secure. I turned my head and looked directly at the pale, sweating man who was still my husband. I called him," I said, pointing at Marcus. "I was in my vehicle in the parking garage. I wept. I told him we were affluent. I told him our lives were about to transform. He was the sole individual in the world I confided in." I glanced back at Brenda. He grew very quiet. He instructed me to return home immediately and not to disclose it to anyone. Not my sister, not my mother, no one. Less than 2 hours later, on the highway, a black truck swerved across 2 lanes of traffic and propelled me into a concrete barrier. The driver never halted. Brenda's hand flew to her mouth. "And while I was confined here," I continued, "in a coma fighting for my life, He arrived at this hospital, but he did not request to see me. He did not ask a single doctor if I would survive. He proceeded to the reception desk. He identified himself as my devoted husband and requested my purse. I let the words hang in the air. He pilfered my wallet from my unconscious person. He has been on a spending spree with my funds. Your Gucci purchases, your steak dinners, all of it. And then, as the culmination of his scheme, he hired you, his new wife, the finest attorney in Atlanta. He hired my own legal counsel to have me declared mentally incompetent so that he could complete the act he initiated on the highway. Brenda took a step back. It was not a small, hesitant step. It was a large, violent lurch, as if she had been physically propelled. Her entire body recoiled from my bed. Her eyes were fixed on my face with an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. The color drained from her face, leaving her dark skin looking ashen. Her expensive foundation appeared as a grotesque, waxy mask. I could perceive her mind at work, the gears grinding behind her wide, terrified eyes. I could see the precise moment the entire horrifying puzzle assembled itself in her mind. This was not merely a case of a philandering fiancé. This was not simply a messy divorce. She, Brenda Adarbio, the senior partner, the sharpest legal mind in Atlanta, had been deceived. She had been utilized as a pawn in an elaborate, vicious stratagem. She had just stood there in that hospital chamber and issued threats against her very own client. On behalf of Marcus, she had submitted a fraudulent plea to the court, aiming to have her client declared mentally unsound. She had accepted a considerable retainer, a substantial sum paid with pilfered funds. Her client's stolen money. This was far beyond mere professional negligence. It was grounds for disbarment, a criminal conspiracy, accessory to fraud, and possibly even accessory to attempted homicide. Her entire existence, her unblemished professional record, her hard-won partnership, her recent wedding, her Hermes satchel now lying ruined on the floor, it was all vanishing into thin air before her eyes. For a fleeting moment, her visceral dread, so palpable, abruptly soured. It hardened, it sharpened, it coalesced into something else. It transformed into the unyielding, searing, self-preservation instinct of a trapped creature. She was no longer Marcus's betrothed. She was a predator, a shark that had just realized it was ensnared in a net, and she was determined to tear her way free, obliterating anything that stood in her path. Her head slowly turned to face Marcus, who remained frozen in place, his countenance a perfect tableau of dumbfounded, terrified bewilderment. He was still grappling with the revelation about her client. When Brenda spoke, her voice was not a scream. It was something far worse. It was a low, throaty, venomous whisper, imbued with such profound animosity that it seemed to chill the very atmosphere of the room. "You," she breathed, her voice trembling with an almost inaudible, deep-seated fury. "You told me your wife had left you." Marcus flinched. "Brenda, my dear, I can explain. You told me she had abandoned you." Brenda's voice began to ascend, gaining intensity. "You told me she had absconded with another man. You told me she was missing." She took a step towards him, and he instinctively recoiled. "You told me she was depleting our joint accounts." Her voice continued, sharp as a whip crack in the room. "You told me she was vindictive, unstable, that she had a history of paranoid delusions. You swore to me she was mentally unsound." The final words were a guttural cry. "You implored me, you begged me for assistance. You said you needed to safeguard your assets from your deranged absent wife. You sat in my office, you held my hand and you wept. You cried, you pathetic, deceitful wretch. You exploited me." No, darling," Marcus stammered, caught in utter disarray. He shifted his gaze from Brenda's contorted, enraged face to me, propped up in the bed, observing. He perceived no allies, no avenue of escape. He saw the imminent collapse of his entire scheme, his new attire, his new companion, his new life all gone. He was trapped, and like any cornered animal, he turned savage. "She's fabricating falsehoods," he bellowed, his face darkening to a blotchy crimson. "It's her. She's the instigator. She's distorting everything. She's conspiring against me. She's attempting to ensnare me." He was desperate, stripped of all his charm, all logical recourse. His entire future lay before him on that bed, a living, breathing, speaking testament to his transgressions. He had one final primal impulse: silence the witness. "Shut up!" he roared, his eyes bulging. He lunged, not at Brenda, but at me, his hands, splayed like claws, aimed for my throat. In an instant, he covered the 2 feet separating us, a mass of raw, desperate aggression. I barely had time to gasp, but Brenda did not. "Security!" she shrieked, her voice a piercing alarm. The door to my room didn't just open, it burst inward, slamming against the wall with a force that rattled the frame. It wasn't merely Nurse Jackie. Nurse Jackie was there, her hand extended, pointing. "In here!" And behind her stood 2 men. They weren't ordinary hospital orderlies in scrubs. They were imposing, clearly professionals. They wore dark polo shirts that stretched taut across impossibly broad shoulders, bearing the discreet lettering "Event Security" on the back. These were the individuals Mr. Hayes had assured me of, the men who had been stationed outside my door for 2 days, simply waiting for this precise moment. Marcus, mid-lunge, his fingers mere inches from my face, stood no chance. The first guard moved with a speed that defied his considerable size. He didn't attempt to apprehend Marcus. He tackled him. He struck low, a solid surge of muscle driving his shoulder into Marcus's abdomen. The impact lifted my husband clear off his feet, propelling him sideways, away from my bed, away from me. Marcus emitted a grunt of pure surprise as the air was expelled from his lungs. He landed on the linoleum floor with a heavy, sickening thud. He had no time to recover. The second guard was upon him instantly, his knee pinning Marcus's shoulders to the floor, his hands expertly twisting Marcus's arm behind his back. "Remain still," the guard commanded. Marcus struggled, cursing, his expensive Tom Ford suit rippling as he thrashed, tearing at the shoulder seam, but it was futile. He was like a child wrestling 2 formidable bears, utterly subdued. His face, contorted into a mask of impotent fury, was pressed against the grimy hospital floor. The entire episode, from his initial lunge to his apprehension, had transpired in less than 3 seconds. I remained seated, my hand clapped to my throat, my heart pounding. Brenda stood panting, her chest heaving, her fists clenched at her sides. She looked at Marcus, pinned and vanquished on the floor. Then she turned her gaze to me. Her expression was no longer solely rage. It was a complex, dawning comprehension. I wasn't just her client. I was her sole potential salvation. The 2 security personnel were seasoned professionals. They had Marcus subdued with efficient, brutal precision. His arms were wrenched behind his back, his costly suit jacket bunched around his shoulders, his face pressed firmly against the cheap beige linoleum. The man who had entered exuding arrogance and power was now merely a pathetic, writhing creature, grunting and cursing into the dust. "Release me," he screamed, his voice muffled by the floor. He tried to writhe, to twist, but the guard's knee was a solid anchor in the center of his back. "Get off me! You can't do this! She's lying! She's deranged! I am her husband!" I looked at him, truly looked at him, for the very first time. Not as the man I had loved or the man I had feared, but as an object, a trapped, desperate entity. The chill within me was so profound it was almost serene. "Not anymore," I stated. My voice was quiet, yet it sliced through his shrieking like a honed blade. Every person in the room fell silent and turned their attention to me. Marcus froze. I shifted my gaze to Nurse Jackie, who stood in the doorway, her hand covering her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and what appeared to be grim satisfaction. "Nurse Jackie," I said, my voice as calm and steady as the heart monitor I was connected to, "would you be so kind as to contact the Atlanta Police Department now?" Jackie nodded, her eyes never leaving the unfolding scene. What should I tell them, dear?" "Tell them," I replied, my gaze returning to the man on the floor. "Tell them I need to report an attempted murder and grand larceny." Marcus began to struggle anew, roaring, "No, it's a fabrication. She's manipulating you. And fraud," Brenda's voice interjected, sharper and more piercing than anyone else's. She was no longer panting. She was pacing, her mobile phone pressed to her ear with one hand, gesticulating wildly with the other. She was no longer merely a lawyer. She was a commander orchestrating an army. She spoke into her phone, yet her voice carried for everyone in the room to hear. "Yes, David. I am at Mercy General Hospital currently, room 204. I require an immediate freeze on all assets connected to Marcus Vance. No, I will not compromise. I possess evidence of his involvement in wire fraud against the firm for the preceding 48 hours. She ceased her pacing and spun towards Marcus, who had once again frozen, his head twisted to stare at her in utter, stunned disbelief. "You think you're clever?" She spat at him, her eyes blazing. "You are a common, imbecilic, utterly stupid criminal. I have the server logs. I have the call records. He attempted to access the Hattie Trust this morning. He contacted our wealth management division, impersonating me, attempting to authorize a transfer. He utilized a voice memo from Ms. Washington. He must have recorded it, attempting to present it as her verbal consent. He tried to impersonate his own wife, my client." She returned to her phone. "And get forensics. I want a trace on that retainer transfer. He paid me with stolen funds. He used Ms. Washington's American Express card. Yes, the client's card. He paid her own attorney with her own illicitly obtained money to pursue a fraudulent claim of incompetence against her. He is finished. We will relegate him to the depths of incarceration." She snapped her phone shut. It was concluded. Marcus understood. I could see it reflected in his eyes. He ceased struggling. His body went slack. He simply lay there, his face pressed to the floor. It was no longer a matter of he said, she said. It was not merely my word against his ingenious strategy, engaging me and utilizing my credentials to access the trust, had generated an overwhelming accumulation of digital, financial, and audio evidence. The preeminent legal counsel in Atlanta, whom he had enlisted as his instrument, had just become his executioner. She knew precisely where every one of his skeletons lay buried, for he had been the imbecile who had led her to the graves. He remained there, defeated. One of the guards hauled him to his feet, his hands secured behind his back with a zip tie. The guard's hand rested firmly on the nape of his neck. Marcus's navy blue Tom Ford suit was ripped at the shoulder and coated in dust from the floor. His immaculate hair was disheveled, his face was blotchy and red. He was merely a small, pathetic figure. Nurse Jackie reappeared at the doorway, her expression grim. "The police are en route. They're dispatching a detective. They'll be here in 5 minutes." Brenda nodded, all business. She retrieved her phone and began dialing again, already planning her next move. "David, connect me with the district attorney's office, the fraud division. Yes, I'll hold." The guards pressed Marcus against the wall. He offered no resistance, merely staring at the floor, breathing heavily. He had lost. He had forfeited everything, the money, the woman, his liberty, and he had orchestrated it all himself. Just as Nurse Jackie concluded her statement, two uniformed Atlanta police officers appeared in the doorway, their expressions somber. The security guards immediately stepped aside, relinquishing Marcus to the police, who pulled him away from the wall and began securing his hands behind his back with metal handcuffs, replacing the zip tie. The metallic click of the cuffs locking into place was the loudest sound in the room. Marcus, who had been limp and defeated, seemed to jolt back to life at the cold, hard touch of the steel. A final, desperate surge of narcissistic fury flooded his system. He knew he was finished, but he was not going down alone. He intended to ignite one last conflagration. He suddenly stiffened. His face, which had been pale and resigned, turned a deep, blotchy red. His eyes, wild and malevolent, darted past the officers, past the guards, past Brenda, and fixed upon me. "You won't prevail!" he screamed, his voice cracking with pure, unadulterated malice. He lunged forward again despite his cuffed hands, forcing the officers to restrain him. "You won't win, you—" He was practically spitting the words, his face contorted. "You think you're so brilliant, huh? You think you've figured it all out? You think I orchestrated this solo?" Brenda and I both froze. Every person in the room became motionless. I looked at Brenda. Her eyes, sharp and analytical, met mine. "Alone?" I inquired, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus heard me and he laughed. It was not the confident, charming laugh I once knew. It was a high-pitched, hysterical, broken sound. It was the laughter of a man who had nothing left to lose and wished to drag the entire world down with him. "You are so utterly foolish, Imani." He cackled even as the officers began to escort him toward the door. "You believe this halts me? You think this is concluded? I am merely the commencement." He twisted his head, resisting the officer's grip, his eyes still locked on me. "You will not receive a solitary cent, not one. I will communicate tomorrow. I will inform Ryan. They are aware. They comprehend everything." My blood turned to ice. "Tamara, my sister Ryan, her husband. They will not permit you to escape this." Marcus was screaming now, his voice echoing down the corridor as they pulled him from the room. "Your white brother-in-law, your esteemed, influential Ryan. He possesses connections beyond your wildest imaginings. He will secure my release by morning. He will attend to me. He will obliterate you. He will finalize the task. You will never, ever triumph." The police officers finally shoved him out of sight. His screams faded down the corridor, but the threat lingered in the sterile air of my hospital room like a toxic cloud. I looked at Brenda. Her face was pale. The triumphant fire in her eyes had vanished, replaced by a new, cold, calculating understanding. This was not over. This was no longer solely about Marcus. He was merely a pawn. This concerned my entire family. This involved my sister Tamara, and it involved her influential, well-connected, affluent white husband, Ryan Brooks, the man who had been at the barbecue with Marcus, the man who truly held the reins. The room suddenly became unnervingly silent. The only sounds were the receding echo of Marcus's screams down the hall and the steady, rhythmic beeping of my heart monitor. The two Atlanta police officers gave me a grim nod and followed their colleagues, leaving me, Brenda, and Nurse Jackie in the room. Nurse Jackie quietly began gathering the scattered contents of Brenda's Hermes briefcase. Brenda stood in the middle of the room, her back to me. She remained perfectly still for a long moment, her shoulders rigid. I watched her take one deep, shuddering breath, then another. She slowly bent down and retrieved her briefcase from Nurse Jackie, her movements stiff. She straightened up, she adjusted the jacket of her designer suit, pulling the cream-colored fabric taut. She smoothed her hair, which remained immaculate. When she finally turned around, the terrified, hysterical woman who had cried, "Oh my God," was gone. The furious, betrayed fiancé who had shrieked at Marcus had also vanished. The individual facing me now was the shark Mr. Hayes had promised. Her eyes were cold, clear, and utterly lethal. There was no trace of fear, there was no panic, there was only the flat, unwavering focus of a predator that had just identified its true quarry. She was not merely angry, she felt insulted, and she was now in damage control mode. She walked to the foot of my bed, her heels clicking with sharp, renewed authority. "Ms. Washington," she said, her voice no longer a scream but a low, precise, and dangerous instrument. "That man, he deceived us both. He manipulated me into being a fool. He exploited my reputation, my firm, and my personal regard to commit fraud. He nearly ruined my career. He nearly cost my firm its most significant client." She paused, her eyes, if possible, growing even harder. "For that I owe you an apology, and I owe him a lesson, a profoundly public, excruciatingly painful lesson." I looked at this formidable, perilous woman. She was not my friend. She was not here out of altruism. She was present to safeguard her own interests, her firm, and her professional standing. But at this juncture, our interests were perfectly aligned. He had sought to destroy us both. I took a breath, feeling the ache in my ribs, but my voice was as cold and clear as hers. "I require legal representation, Miss Adabio." Brenda looked at me, a fleeting hint of something, perhaps respect, in her eyes. I continued, "I do not need his new spouse. I do not need his incensed, discarded fiancé. I require the preeminent litigator in Atlanta. I need the shark, because he was correct about one matter." Brenda didn't need to inquire. She understood. "Ryan Brooks," she stated, the name sounding like a malediction on her tongue. "My sister Tamara and her husband Ryan," I confirmed. "Marcus is merely a blustering, avaricious simpleton. He is a pawn. Ryan is the one possessing the wealth and the influence. He is the one who attended the barbecue with Marcus. He is the one who truly attempted to end my life." Brenda's lips curled back in a smile. It was not a smile at all. It was a baring of teeth. "Then we have a substantial amount of work ahead of us. He may possess connections, but I possess a $29 million incentive to safeguard my client. He has absolutely no inkling of what is descending upon him." She retrieved her phone and began dialing. "Let us commence with your brother-in-law, Ryan Brooks." A week had elapsed. I was no longer in the stark antiseptic room at Mercy General, permeated with the scent of disinfectant and dread. Brenda had relocated me under an alias to the presidential suite at the Four Seasons in downtown Atlanta. It was a magnificent gilded prison. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panorama of the city where I no longer felt secure. Two discreet yet formidable security guards, arranged and compensated by the law firm, were stationed in the hallway around the clock. My body was healing. The dark, unsightly contusions on my ribs had faded to a sickly yellow hue, and the pain had subsided from a sharp stab to a dull, persistent ache. But the true conflict, I was beginning to understand, was just commencing. Brenda sat opposite me on a plush, cream-colored sofa. Her laptop lay open, and she was entirely focused on business. The woman who had been Marcus's paramour, his recent wife, had vanished. She had been supplanted by the shark, the litigator, the individual whose entire professional reputation was on the line. "All right, Imani," she said, her voice crisp. "Here's the situation. Marcus is currently detained at Fulton County Jail. As anticipated, bail was denied. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges." She took a sip of her coffee. "And precisely as he threatened, your brother-in-law has made his move. Ryan Brooks has retained David Chen to represent Marcus, the most expensive and most ruthless criminal defense attorney in the state. Seated next to her in a matching armchair was a man named Mike. He was the antithesis of Brenda in every respect. He appeared disheveled in a creased linen shirt, and he possessed the weary, patient gaze of someone who had witnessed everything. He was the private investigator and former police officer whom Brenda had hired using my funds. Mike leaned forward and opened his own file. His voice was a low, steady rumble. "We initiated with the truck, precisely as you requested. It was a monumental task. The driver was skilled. He utilized a cloned license plate, but we discovered a discrepancy on a toll camera 3 exits prior to the crash site. The cloned plate bore a different registration sticker. We identified the actual plate." He slid a grainy black and white photograph across the glass coffee table. "It was the truck captured at a toll plaza. The plate is registered to a shell corporation," he explained, "an LLC based in Delaware. It's named Brooks Holdings." I let out a laugh. The sound that escaped me was not one of amusement. It was a short, sharp, bitter exhalation that startled even me. Brenda raised an eyebrow. "You recognize that name?" "Oh, I recognize that name," I replied, the words tasting like venom. "Brooks Holdings, LLC. That is his designation for it. His personal investment fund. My brother-in-law." I felt compelled to explain. "My sister Tam, she married Ryan Brooks. He's white. He hails from old money in Virginia. He's a managing director at a prominent investment firm, and he has never, ever allowed my family to forget that he considers himself superior to us." I gazed out the window. "He despises us, truly. He believes we are beneath him, but my sister, Tamara, she worships him. She reveres the grand estate in Buckhead, the country club, his circle of white associates. She would do anything to maintain her status as Mrs. Ryan Brooks. And for years, at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, I have had to endure Ryan boasting about his personal fund, Brooks Holdings, and how he employs it for astute, aggressive ventures." Mike nodded as if I had merely confirmed his pre-existing knowledge. "That makes perfect sense," he stated and pushed another document across the table. "It is a copy of a bank transfer, because the payment to the driver, a $50,000 wire transfer, was remitted from an account directly managed by Ryan Brooks. The transfer was initiated 2 days prior to your accident." My breath hitched, but Mike had not concluded. "And then there are the jail calls. Marcus is arrogant, but he's also foolish. He believes that because he's speaking with his new legal counsel, David Chen, everything is protected. However, his conversations with his family are not. We obtained a warrant and have been monitoring them." He activated a small digital recording device he had placed on the table. The opulent hotel suite was suddenly filled with my husband's small, terrified voice. Ryan, listen to me. She has Brenda. She knows. You have to get me out of here. You promised me this would be clean." Mike hit pause, then played it again, a different call. This one was to my sister. "Tamara, you have to make him. You tell your husband he better not abandon me in here. You tell him what I told you. If I go down, you both go down with me. You hear me? You tell him to take care of that, or I'll take care of him." Mike pressed stop. The silence in the room was absolute. It was no longer a hypothesis. It was a concrete fact. They had all of them, every single one, attempted to end my life. Brenda raised a hand, signaling Mike to halt. Her expression was grave. The assassination attempt was Plan A. It was crude. It was brutal. Frankly, it was all Marcus. But Plan B is far more cunning. It's more insidious, and it's all Ryan. She slid another, thicker document across the glass table. This one bore the stamp of the Fulton County Family Court. "They didn't just try to kill you," Brenda stated, her voice flat. "They have a contingency plan for your survival. As of this morning, Ryan and Tamara Brooks, have submitted an emergency petition for conservatorship. I simply stared at her. Conservatorship? Like what happened to Britney Spears? Precisely, Brenda confirmed, her eyes hard. They are asserting that you are mentally unsound and psychologically traumatized as a result of your unfortunate accident. They claim you are paranoid, delusional, and utterly incapable of managing your own affairs, specifically incapable of managing a $29 million estate. I let out a harsh, dry laugh. No one will believe that. It's preposterous. They will, Brenda said quietly. They will because they have a key witness, someone who is prepared to swear under oath that you have always been this way, someone the court will perceive as a loving, concerned, and entirely credible source. A chilling dread more profound than anything I had experienced before began to creep up my spine. Who? Brenda met my gaze directly. Your mother. I stopped breathing. My mother? No, she wouldn't. Brenda turned a page and slid it over. It was an affidavit, a sworn declaration signed by my mother, Patricia Washington. Brenda began to read from her own copy, her voice devoid of any emotion. She attests that you have always been the unstable one, that you have suffered from delusions of grandeur and persecution since childhood, that you harbored an intense pathological jealousy toward your sister Tamara's success, and that, in her loving maternal opinion, you are a danger to yourself, and this sudden unearned wealth will only fuel your tragic mental decline. I remained motionless, simply gazing at the signature on the page. My mother, the woman who was meant to protect me, the one who always favored Tamara, who always called me too sensitive, who had consistently sided with Marcus throughout this entire ordeal. My husband, my sister, my brother-in-law, and my mother, all of them, every single person in the world I was supposed to be able to rely on. They had all colluded, first to end my life, and then, when that failed, to have me confined, declared legally insane so they could pilfer my fortune. I closed my eyes. I felt the dull ache in my ribs. I felt the cold, empty expanse of the hotel suite. Then I opened them. The sorrow was gone. The shock had vanished. The fear had dissipated. There was nothing left inside me but a cold, hard, hollow space, waiting to be filled. When is the hearing? I inquired. My voice was calm. It didn't even sound like my own. Brenda looked up from her file, surprised by my tone. It's an emergency petition. They're fast-tracking it. It's scheduled for next week, Monday morning. I stood up. The city lights of Atlanta sparkled below, a vast expanse of diamonds that suddenly seemed remarkably, unmistakably clear. They want a spectacle in court, I stated, turning to face Brenda and Mike. They want to put my mental state on public display. I walked over to the full-length mirror by the door. I looked at my reflection. The bruises, the weary eyes, the woman they believed they could shatter. All right, I declared, my voice quiet yet imbued with a new, terrible power. But we are not waiting until Monday, and we are not going to their court. Brenda stood up. Imani, what are you talking about? I turned to face them. They are all at my mother's house right now. I know it. It's Sunday. They are having their little celebratory dinner. They are toasting their victory. I looked at Mike. Your men are still outside, correct? He nodded. 2 in the hall, 2 downstairs. Good, I said. Brenda, call the police. Tell them you have evidence of an active conspiracy to commit murder and that you are accompanying your client to confront the suspects. Instruct them to meet us there discreetly. Brenda's eyes widened, and then a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. She understood. I glanced back at my reflection. They want a show. We will give them one. The performance of a lifetime. Let's go to dinner. That same evening, my mother's suburban residence, a place I had always associated with the comforting aroma of roasting chicken and collard greens, and the sound of my own shortcomings being dissected over sweet potato pie. It was the traditional Sunday supper, a cherished family ritual, the one occasion where we all feigned perfection. And as we pulled up in a silent, unmarked vehicle, I knew they would be there. I could sense it. Brenda sat beside me, all sharp angles and suppressed fury. She was accompanied by two plainclothes detectives, their faces impassive and bored, as if this were merely another stop on a long, disheartening night. They were not here to intimidate, they were here to apprehend. We walked up the familiar concrete path. The front door stood unlocked, as it invariably did on Sundays. From the foyer, I could hear them. They were gathered in the dining room, and the sounds emanating from within were not of sorrow or concern for their absent family members. The sounds were of celebration. I could hear the delicate clinking of silverware against my mother's fine china, the set she reserved solely for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I heard the distinct pop of a cork, followed by light, tinkling laughter. My sister, Tamara. We paused, concealed by the deep shadows of the hallway. I could detect the rich, savoury scent of the roast, a fragrance that once signified comfort, but now only represented profound betrayal. They were toasting. I simply cannot fathom that child. My mother, Patricia's voice cut through the air. It was sharp with that familiar, stinging indignation she invariably reserved for me. I truly cannot. All these years acting like a little martyr at her non-profit, acting holier than thou while she possessed that wealth, just hoarding it from her own family. It's deceitful. That's precisely what it is. And then, she continued, her voice escalating, to simply let her poor husband Marcus be arrested like some common criminal. It's a disgrace, an embarrassment. And to do so in front of you, Ryan, I am just so sorry you have to be associated with this debacle. Now, Patricia, stop worrying your head. My sister Tamara's voice, slick and proud, chimed in. I could vividly picture her twirling her wineglass, leaning on her husband's arm, the queen of the dinner table. Ryan has everything under control. I told you he would. I heard her take a delicate sip. Ryan's attorney is the absolute best in Atlanta. He is going to go to court on Monday morning, and he is going to prove what we have always known, that Imani is simply not stable. She's paranoid. That accident. Her voice dripped with feigned pity. You know, it just pushed her right over the edge. She's hysterical. So we, she declared, and I knew we encompassed her and Ryan, will assume control of the assets. It's the only responsible course of action. It's for the good of the family. We will ensure she receives proper care in a reputable facility. Of course, a quiet one. Then his voice, the one I detested more than any other, that smooth, condescending, old money drawl that he, as a white man, used to assert his superiority within our home, within our black family. Precisely, Tamara. Ryan stated your mother is entirely justified in her distress, but you are absolutely correct to be practical. I heard the distinct, expensive clink as he set his wineglass down. The woman is incompetent. She cannot even manage her own marriage, let alone a multi-million-dollar fortune. She never could. We will manage the money for her. Consider it a finder's fee, a reward really, for all the years we have had to endure her. Laughter erupted, my mother and my sister. They laughed, a light, airy, relieved sound. They found the remark humorous. That was the precise moment. I drew a single deep breath. The ache in my ribs was a dull fire, but my voice was pure ice. Mentally unstable Ryan? The laughter ceased. It didn't fade, it shattered. It was as if I had flipped a switch, plunging the entire house into a dead, electric, paralyzing silence. I heard a fork clatter against a plate, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the suddenly quiet room. I stepped out of the shadows and into the warm light of the dining room. The three of them jerked their heads toward the doorway as one. Their faces. I will see their faces in my dreams for the remainder of my life. My mother's mouth hung open, a piece of food half chewed, her hand frozen above her plate. Tamara's wine glass was suspended halfway to her lips, her eyes wide with pure animalistic shock, the color draining from her face, and Ryan and his smug, self-satisfied country club smile dissolved. It didn't just fade, it fell away from his face. His complexion, usually so ruddy and confident, turned a pale, sickly, chalky white. He looked as though he had encountered a spectre, but I was not a spectre. I was not the weak, broken Imani they remembered. I was not the scapegoat in oversized sweaters they could mock and dismiss. I had spent 2 hours at the hotel preparing myself. I was adorned in a blood-red, razor-sharp pantsuit, a power suit. My hair, which they were accustomed to seeing in a simple puff, was pulled back into a severe, potent, tightly coiled bun. The style highlighted the one thing I wanted them to see, the faint, silvery, crescent-shaped scar on my temple, the tangible evidence of the accident for which he had paid. I was not the victim. I was the reckoning, and I had not arrived alone. Brenda stepped up beside me, a dark, elegant shadow in a charcoal grey suit. Her heels clicked once, twice on the hardwood floor. She wasn't carrying her briefcase as an accessory. She was holding it like an incendiary device. Behind us, filling the doorway, stood the two detectives. They were large, impassive, and their plainclothes suits did nothing to conceal the weight of the badges and equipment clipped to their belts. They did not look at the food, they did not look at the fine china, they did not look at my mother or my sister. They looked directly at Ryan. My mother, Patricia, was the first to find her voice. Her shock instantly transmuted into her default setting, rage. "Imani!" she shrieked, slamming her hand on the dining table, causing the good china to rattle. What are you doing here? You're not welcome in this house. You get out." I took another step into the room, my eyes like ice. "I came to reclaim what is mine, Mama, and to witness the final act of your performance." "That's sufficient," Ryan commanded gruffly. He shot up from his chair, his napkin falling to the floor. He attempted to puff out his chest to reassert the control he had just lost. His face was blotchy and red. "You are trespassing. I am ordering you to leave this property immediately before I summon the authorities." "Oh, there is no necessity to summon them," Brenda stated, stepping forward. She unclasped her briefcase with a loud, sharp click. "They are already present." On cue, the two detectives emerged from the hallway, moving past us to position themselves in the center of the room. They remained silent. They simply stood there. Their presence seemed to extract all the air from the room. Ryan's face, which had been ruddy with bluster, turned a chalky, sickly white. Tamara emitted a small, terrified whimper and shrank back in her chair. What is this?" she stammered, looking at me. "Imani, what have you done? Are you insane?" I laughed. The sound was cold. "Am I insane?" I repeated, taking a step towards her. "Am I insane, Tamara, or is it insane to conspire with your husband? Is it insane to utilize his company, Brooks Holdings, to hire a truck to run your own sister off the road?" "That's a fabrication," Tamara shrieked, but her voice was thin and laced with panic. "Is it?" Brenda inquired. She retrieved a document from her briefcase and slapped it onto the dining table, directly atop the roast chicken. "Ryan Brooks, you are under arrest for attempted murder in the first degree and financial fraud." One detective stepped forward and secured Ryan's hands behind his back. "You have the right to remain silent." "Tamara Brooks," Brenda continued, placing a second document down. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud. We have your text messages to Marcus Vance. My personal favorite," she said, reading from her phone, "is the one where you urged, 'Hurry up and get it done. Mum has already agreed to testify that Imani is unstable.'" The second detective moved toward Tamara, gently pulling her up from her chair by the arm. "No!" Ryan suddenly bellowed. His bravado evaporated, replaced by pure, sniveling terror. He attempted to twist away. "It was her. It was all her. She told me to. She pushed me. She said Imani deserved it." "You coward!" Tamara screamed, all her composure gone, supplanted by the feral rage of a cornered rodent. "You told me it was a sure thing. You have ruined me." She turned her face towards me, her eyes blazing with venom. You orchestrated this. You destroyed everything. You ungrateful." The police officers cuffed them both and began escorting them from the room. Their Sunday supper was concluded. I watched them depart. Then I turned to the sole individual remaining at the table, my mother. She was simply sitting there, stunned, her face slack, her eyes vacant. I walked slowly, directly up to her until I was standing over her. "You always declared me the failure, Mama," I said, my voice quiet. "You always claimed I was the disappointment." She merely stared at me. "Your golden boy, Marcus, attempted to end my life. Your golden girl, Tamara, aided him. And you are the principal witness." I gestured to her plate. "All of this, all your fealty, solely to impress a man who does not even respect you." I leaned in closer. "Enjoy your dinner." And then I turned and walked away. 6 months later, I occupied a seat in the front row of a courtroom. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and aged wood. I was no longer the woman in the hospital bed or the phantom in the crimson pantsuit. I was merely a witness. My voice as a voiceover would convey what transpired next. Marcus was the first to receive his sentence. The evidence uncovered by Brenda and the detectives was overwhelming. The wire fraud, the server logs from the law firm, the bank statements from my pilfered card, and his own idiotic, panicked assault on me in the hospital. He was convicted of attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit fraud, and grand larceny. The judge was unsparing. He characterized Marcus as a parasite and a blight upon his own community. He was sentenced to 25 years in a state penitentiary with no possibility of parole. As the sentence was read, Marcus, clad in an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit, turned his head. He looked directly at me. I harbored no expectation of remorse. I anticipated no apology, and I received neither. His eyes were not filled with sadness. They were not defeated. They were alight with a burning, toxic hatred. He harbored no regret for his actions. He was merely furious that I had survived. Then came Ryan, my brother-in-law, Ryan Brooks. The patriarch of our family did what all cowards with financial means invariably do. He attempted to negotiate a plea bargain to extricate himself. He confessed to everything. He admitted to orchestrating the truck incident. He admitted to financing the entire scheme. He admitted to conspiracy. And then, with pathetic, whimpering desperation, he shifted blame to everyone else. He informed the court that he had been manipulated, that he had been pressured, that he had not been in his right mind, and he pointed his finger directly at my sister. He told the court that Tamara was the true architect of the plan, that she was consumed by jealousy, that she was the one who coerced him, who presented him with the idea, who declared, "I deserved it." The judge did not fully accept all his claims, but the confession secured him a reduced sentence. Not freedom, but a compromise. Ryan Brooks, the scion of old money, was sentenced to 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder. He was permanently stripped of his financial licenses. His career was irrevocably over. But the true reckoning befell his family. His affluent, white Virginia relatives, who had been observing the proceedings with expressions of horror, did not await the appeal process. They disowned her, not him, they disowned Tamara, the black woman who, in their estimation, had corrupted their son, who had brought such disgrace and scandal to their esteemed name. They severed all ties with her immediately and completely. She lost her residence, she lost her social standing, she lost her financial resources, and she lost her husband. She was convicted as an accomplice and received a sentence of 10 years. She lost absolutely everything. And my mother, Patricia Washington, sat in the rear of the courtroom, utterly alone. She had lost both of her favored children, her seemingly perfect, accomplished daughter, and her brilliant, charismatic son-in-law, all gone. Her entire world, the one she had meticulously constructed upon appearances and favoritism, had evaporated. She sat there, a diminutive elderly woman, witnessing the disintegration of her entire life. She has phoned me hundreds of times. She leaves lengthy, rambling, tearful messages. At times she expresses anger. At times she pleads. At times she simply weeps. I have never responded. I have not answered a single one. Herein lies the profound lesson I gleaned from this entire nightmare. My narrative illustrates that sometimes the individuals who are ostensibly your greatest protectors are, in reality, your most perilous predators. Wealth, particularly a substantial sum, such as $29 million, does not fundamentally alter individuals. It merely exposes their true nature, revealing who they have always been. It functions as a spotlight, illuminating the avarice, envy, and cruelty that lay concealed within the shadows of family. They labeled me a failure, but my intrinsic value was never, ever contingent upon their validation. The ultimate form of justice was not merely witnessing their apprehension. It was the realization that I had survived, and that my new existence would be forged from my own resilience, far removed from their toxic influence. Have you ever had a family member attempt to convince you or others that you are the one who is unstable? I would be most interested to read your personal experiences in the comments section below.